my co-host Phil for episode 294. If you're listening on YouTube, yes, I forgot to adjust the volume on the intro. I promise I will get that set and ready, but at least you had an intro once again. We did fix that. But Phil, did you notice my waving? Where I stole this, well, didn't steal it. I took it from the wedding we were at on Saturday. How did you think it successfully went?
The wedding?
Yeah. And our reception that we were all a part of.
It was fun. It was overall quite good. The hayride might have been the highlight.
Yes. Yep. That's what I keep talking about as well. Yep.
Yeah, there was a hayride, and when you think of hayrides, you think pretty calm, pretty just kind of scenic, going through
Sometimes
some
spooky.
I would say spooky, pumpkin patch or something. This one wasn't super long, but he was going real quick, and he was whipping the tractor, whipping the I don't know, what would you call the back? I don't know, the seats, the wagon, but like the really big wagon. He was whipping it around, and I had a drink in my hand for the ride because I assumed it was going to be a more scenic, casual ride, and I lost most of it. Pat, who sat across from me, the producer Pat, he sat across from me on the ride. He held on to like 90% of it. I don't know how. I don't know if his side was better or how he was so stable. My drink was all over the place, and it got called out many times to watch your step as you walked off because I was in the very back, and there was just liquid everywhere. Couldn't control it. A lot of fun, though. It was a lot of fun, and not what you expect from a hayride, but in a good way.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that they didn't warn us about was, hands, feet inside the vehicle at all times, try to not to spill your drink. And then he got on the tractor and he goes, if you hear this sound, it was a little honk, means hang on. We're like, ha, means like a bump or something. This man was Tokyo drifting that thing. Like when you go to a turn, normal people would slow down through the turn and then speed up when they're leaving the turn. This man sped up and continued to speed up through the turns and whipped that thing around. The one thing he forgot to mention was if you are pregnant or expecting children, not to take this ride. Our friend Alyssa, who's 8 months pregnant with twin girls, was on that ride. We were a little worried she was going to go into labor on that ride just because of how insane it was. But yeah, when we're saying he drifted that thing, he drifted it. It was a great time, but
yeah.
Oh no. I think everybody was like, yeah, how was it? Always just hang on. That's all we can really say. We didn't want to ruin it, but it was like, hang on. Mike, our buddy Mike spilled his drink before we even started the turn. He just spilled it everywhere instantly. It was a fun time, though. Fun time. That's where I got this light up thing. It was a fun time, and
good wedding. Good wedding.
I controlled myself, and the next wedding we'll be attending. Well, I'll be attending. I know you said you got one this weekend. Next wedding I'll be attending is yours. So we'll see how that one, if I can go 1 for 3 on the season so far, if it'll fall to 2 for 3.
We did learn that your Airbnb is 1 minute from the from the venue, so I feel like that could get some risky decisions with it being that close. You'd be like, we're so close, I don't have to go anywhere, it's a nice short drive. I feel like you're just going to really dive in and just let loose because it's not very far away from where you're going to sleep.
It's an all-weekend occasion, too. So, yeah, we're going up Friday. But, congratulations once again to Cam and Cindy. Very fun wedding. And Phil's up next on my docket. So, remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective and on X and Blue Sky Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. That's where you can go to shop our store. All you have to do is hit the shop tab. You can represent the BSC on the go. If you for some reason don't want to go to our website, you can just go to our social media accounts, look for the link tree, and the store tab will appear there. It'll take you right there. We got tons of goodies. I don't really have anything on me right now that I can display. That'll probably be the next step in this off-season mode, but we're all relaxed. And then look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. Mad Matty Minute, once again. So far, he is cleaning me out of house and home. I'm cleaning up after his animals, returning his packages, getting food for him. I am his water boy and his gardener. And now, Phil, I am his charger boy. You know how there are times in life where you just need a charger and you need to charge something, and you can never find that charger, and it's usually your phone, or if you got a battery operated weed whacker, a leaf blower, the battery's dead, I got you covered. I got fully charged batteries or fully charged chargers, even though that doesn't make any sense. I will just appear with a trench coat, where the old videos where our old cartoons where they just open it and there's like watches and all this kind of stuff. That's me. But I'll have the chargers and the batteries. Weed whacker battery, I got it. Electronic toothbrush, I got you. Anything that's on a charge, either I will provide the charger if you don't need it right away, or a fully charged up battery if you do. I will be Matt Vinc, your charger boy.
So here's what I'm imagining. Matt Vinc is about to get on a flight, and he needs something charged. But he's already through security, and he's waiting for his plane. And PK, in a trench coat covered with chargers and electronic devices, has to sprint past security and somehow get those chargers to Matt Vinc without causing any kind of alarm from a trench coat full of electronic devices. It'll be great. And I hope he calls you out on that one.
Yeah,
Would love to see you on the news and be like, well, our show lost a co-host today. He'll be indisposed for a little bit.
Or I'm charging down the tarmac. He forgot his charger. Jumping on the wing of the plane as it takes off. Yeah.
Throw it up and crack a window.
Yeah, I'll get you that charger though, man. It's, once again, all these are legally binding if you sign. Well, not even sign. If you just come back, you don't even have to sign your name anywhere. It's just if you return.
We just need a letter of intent to return.
Letter of intent. Do we get it notarized, Phil? Should we get that notarized?
I would appreciate it if it was notarized, especially with all these legally binding terms you got going on. You're going to want that notarized.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're up to 6. There's 6 episodes in this offseason. Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm him, I'm just waiting until December and saying I'm back, because that's a lot of deals here. I'm already running short. I'm a Charger boy now, Phil. But let's dive into the Buffalo Bandits segment here. We are in the classroom for one final time this offseason, this time talking about the Toronto Rock and the Albany Firewolves, the two arch nemesis who both got swept in the playoffs by your Buffalo Bandits on their way to back-to-back championships. What we do, for those of you who are just tuning in, we go over what the season was, what draft picks they hold, the players they still have to sign from previous year's draft picks. We go over the players that played for them last year, what their contract status is, how many years they have left on the team, or if they're UFAs. Then after all that is said and done, we give them a grade, and then, as the true bandits that we are, we try to steal a player from them and what would look good on the Buffalo Bandits from those teams if Buffalo does make a move. Once again, disclaimer, because we did it last week. Yes, we understand the lineups is absolutely stacked. They have too many draft picks to begin with. And I was even listening to an interview with Steve Dietrich. He said the chances of him using all the picks, he can't fully commit to it, but he would say that if he was a betting man, he would not bet to use all those picks. We've been saying that for a long time now, but we understand that situation. These players are, I'll use again, Zach Higgins. If we say on the graphic we want Zach Higgins, it means that we're playing as if Matt Vinc is not returning. If we went after a defender, maybe that means, hey, maybe Adam Bomberry decided not to come back. Maybe Paul Dawson decided to retire. If we go after a forward, maybe Kyle Buchanan decided to retire. Most of these players are if something else happens. So listen to the episode and it'll make sense from here on out. But let's start with the third place Toronto Rock. Yes, they finished first overall in the regular season, but you lost to Buffalo and you finished third. So you own the 13th overall pick in the upcoming draft. They finished 15-3 on the season, 12.11 goals for, which was 11th on the season, 9.39 goals against first. But Phil, once again, they could not get past the Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, this team is very weird to go over, right? They're obviously extremely good, very, very talented team, and the big thing that they needed to change in the offseason was their offense. And what they went out and did was grabbed Mark Matthews, who put up a very impressive 97 points. top the entire team. And I understand Schreiber was injured for a while, so that will play a big part of it because, I mean, he went from 116 points and down to, give me
74.
second.
No, 76.
76. So that's a huge drop off. So I was going to mention the fact that their offense actually went backwards a little bit this year as a whole, but at the same time, when one of your top players is out that long, and that's a lot of points. So it's harder to say that their offense, I mean, the year before they scored 234 goals. This year they're 218. So it did technically go down, but when you're missing, I mean, that's Schreiber's, 25-ish? It's actually way over 25, 35, 40-ish points. So 40 points if you add 40-ish goals to 218, and you have a much, much better looking season. So I think they did what they needed to do, and overall the team, I think, got better despite the fact that the offense kind of got worse, even though Mark Matthews obviously was a huge get, brought in a lot of numbers. I mean, the points he was able to get was huge, but Craig went from 82 to 55 in 3 less games. Small went from 83 to 74. So weird to see them bring in such a humongous piece like Matthews. Like, that was the big thing they needed to bring in the offseason. And even without Schreiber, like, parts of their team went backwards on offense where you would think they would need to improve and get better with such a big addition like Matthews. You would think the whole offense as a unit would get better, even without Schreiber there the whole season. So weird to see other players take a step back when you have a player like Matthews trying to elevate the offense. And then Bushi had a good season, but he was pretty close to a point-for-point takeover of Keogh, who was there the year before. So those pretty much just replaced each other. So the offense as a whole, to me, I know Schreiber's injured. Again, if you kind of add his points back into what he would have been closer, the offense as a whole probably would have been a little bit better from year over year. But weird to see some of the bigger names on the offense take a step back with the big addition of a player like Matthews. The defense was the defense again. They played absolutely incredible. And Justin Martin, the rookie, to find that in a rookie, the way they were able to find him and how great he did, he's going to be scary and a scary addition for them, which is a little bit upsetting because they don't need any other good defensive players. And then Rose is Nick Rose. Question for you. Jubenville, what happened to him this season? Do you know what happened to him? I'll put it
quite
that
a
way.
bit. He only played in 9 games.
Yeah, he went from 22 caused turnovers in 17 games to 4 caused turnovers in 9. So he's a weird one. I do obviously see that he was injured, but he was strange. If they can get him back on defense, back to what he was the year before, that's just another bigger piece of their defense that they don't need any help with. So to me, the biggest thing was just their offense, right? I mean, that was supposed to be the main focal point. The main thing that got them past Buffalo was the increase in offense. And you brought in Mark Matthews, who put up a really impressive almost 100-point season. It's not like he did poorly, but especially when they needed him the most in playoffs, he kind of fell flat on his face. And as a team in playoffs, they went from 28 goals the year before in all of playoffs to 21 goals this season in playoffs. So the reason you brought him in to beat the Bandits, to be better, was in the playoffs in offense, and they actually got worse in their playoffs for offense. So definitely they still need to figure out what's going on with their offense. I mean, obviously, what was they, 15-3, beyond incredible season. I mean, goals for third, goals against first. I mean, you can't really do much better in season than what they did, but playoffs still an issue, and Mark Matthews, their big addition, needed to step up in playoffs, and he did not.
Yeah, I think the offense is the key in this one. You kind of went over all the numbers, but you talk about the goals that they scored in the playoffs. They scored 4 in Game 1 versus Buffalo and 8 in Game 2. 12 total goals in 2 games is not good enough. I don't care how good your defense is. This is definitely a problem with the offense right now because you got Mark Matthews, who's 34. He's going to be a free agent. You can't franchise him. You can, but he's got to agree to it. You got Corey Small, UFA. You got Dan Craig, Tom Schreiber, and Chris Bushi, all with 1 year left. Schreiber's 32, Bushi's 27, and Dan Craig's 30. You got Dan Littner, who's a free agent right now. He's 32. Your youngest players right now is Josh Dawick, who's got a year left. He only played in 14 games, 29 points. And I think that's the biggest issue for this team right now is what direction do they go in for their forward group, because they're older. They don't have a young players like, Josh Byrne just turned 30. You got Nanikoke, who's in his 20s. Yes, you got the older veteran in Kyle Buchanan, but you also got Dane Smith in his prime right now. He's just going to be turning 32. You got Chase Frazier, who I believe is going to be turning 29. You got Chris Cloutier, who's under 30. So what Buffalo has, and I kind of reference Buffalo to a lot of these teams because they're the benchmark of what you got to pass, and not just because we cover the Bandits and Bandits fans, but that's the gold standard right now. That's the team that you have to match with, and that's who Toronto is trying to catch and surpass to finally, like dethrone the king. They haven't been able to do that right now. But I mean, Matthews 34, Schreiber's 32, Corey Small's 37. Your top 3-point producers are on the wrong side of 30 and going to be on the wrong side of 32. And yes, you're going to have to try to convince Mark Matthews to come back. I believe they're going to get a deal done, and I believe he's going to be coming back. But does Corey Small want to go back to Toronto once again? Another failed season? Does Dan Lintner return to there? Only 32 points, but he was another piece on that offense. It's definitely a piece of this offense where, yes, they went through injuries as well. Not as much as Buffalo did, but Schreiber missed the first 5 games of the year. Dan Craig missed 3 games. Bushi missed 2 games. You had Latrell Harris, who missed an entire season. Jubenville missed 9 games. Challen Rogers missed 6 games. You had Mitch Desnew with 1. T.D. Erlin with 2. So the consistency wasn't fully there, but when it came time for playoffs, everybody was there, and they laid a goose egg. And that's the biggest issue is what they're going to do with this offense. And this was a talking point when we had an episode in May where we talked about New York, Toronto, San Diego, and Halifax, and what do you think they do? And my thought process was, if you want to keep the band together, maybe you need a different leader and a different voice in that room, and Matt Sawyer is still there. Now, there's only been one coach, and he stepped down, and they're looking to replace him, and that's in Philly. I don't believe any coaches are currently going to be losing their jobs when it's already July and free agency starts in August. I can't imagine that's happening, so I believe you're going to roll with the same players you do and the same coaching staff that you do. It'll be very interesting how active they are in the free agent market and how active they are in the trade department to try to address the issues with the forward group, because your defense is set. You got Mitch Desnew and Brad Cree to lead the defense. You have Nick Rose, who just won goaltender of the year. Between the pipes, he's probably coming back. Yes, he's a free agent, but I can't see him leaving Toronto whatsoever. It's and like you already mentioned, adding Justin Martin there, who was cut. I can't remember who from. Maybe Panther City. That might be familiar, but he was a camp cut, and Toronto was just like, hey, we like this guy, and he was a stud. It'll be very interesting to see what this team does this offseason, mostly on the forward group, because their back end is pretty much locked in. Challen Rogers, 3 more years. Mitch Desnew and Brad Cree got a year left. Justin Martin needs a new deal, but his rights are with the team. Latrell Harris is an RFA, but he should be back and fully healthy next year. I'm not worried about the defense whatsoever. I'm not worried about the goaltender whatsoever. It's what they're going to be doing with that forward group up there.
Yeah, I don't really have too much more to add to that. I mean, we both kind of said our piece about it. I do have a different player I'd like to poach than the one you chose, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I don't like they're in such a weird spot, because you just went 15-3. We just talked about it. They were the 3rd best offense in the league during the season. They were the number 1 defense by far during the season. You can't really go up during the season if you're them. Like if like, I don't know, if you're Toronto, I feel like you have to just feel at a loss for what to really do. Like, yes, we're saying running it back seems risky because you just lost to the Bandits again and got swept by them again. So, like, it seems like you're almost being forced to make some kind of adjustment to get past them. But at the same time, you just had one of the greatest NLL seasons of all time. How do you not just be like, I don't know, like, where do you make adjustments when you have a season like that? The season that went so well for them, and they had so many injuries. So take those injuries out. Do they just kind of say, okay, if we were healthier, maybe it would have gone better? I don't know. Like, they're in a really weird spot, because I do feel like they have to do something on offense. And like you said, some of those players have to also come back willingly. Like a Small, if they lose that, then you're starting to get in some trouble. But if everybody's willing to come back, I feel like they still need something to push them over the edge. But at the same time, they were the best team all season long. And even you and I during the season, I mean, every single time the Bandits would go up against them, we'd be like, all right, this is scary. Like, we don't want to face Toronto. And then even in the playoffs, we were like, when the seeding came out and you actually wanted the Bandits to do kind of worse so they wouldn't have to see Toronto until the finals possibly, because you didn't want to have to go through them. And then the Bandits took care of business. But that's how scary of a team they were. And yet we're still talking, they have to do something to be even scarier because they still cannot get past the Bandits.
Yeah, so before we give out the grades and players we might poach, let's go through our first sponsor of this episode, Tap That Tap Room.
Tap That Tap Room is at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar featuring 30 consistently rotating taps of beer, ciders, sours, seltzers, and malt beverages.
So before you get the calendar out and your notepads and jot down all these events that they got going on, remember, they are dog-friendly with a nice season going on. They have the patio open. Dogs are allowed. It just jogged my memory because I had one of my dogs in the backyard, and she ate a bee. And, yeah, that's a fun time. But, yeah, you can bring your dogs to this event. Be free. Be free over there. But, yeah, you can hang out with your dogs while you're drinking some nice drinks that you're going to be finding your favorite over there. But Wednesday, every week, Geeks Who Drink starting at 7:30. We got trivia there. Thursday, July 11th is Irish Pub Night. I am Irish. Looking forward to this night. Irish music. They got different Irish beers on tap. Guinness in a can with beer specials starting at 7:30. All this with some bagpipes. So for you Buffalo Bandits fans out there, they get absolutely crazy when the bagpipes start up. Hey, maybe head down to Tap That Tap Room. Saturday, July 13th, live music with Eric Weinholtz and Nelson Rivera starting at 7:30. Double dose of live music on Saturday. So for any other posted event, go to their Facebook page or check out what's on tap and what's on deck at tapthattaproom.com. Phil, I gave him an A- for Toronto. I think that might be a tad too high because I think their expectations were championship or bust. But when you finish 15-3, you make it to the second round of the playoffs, and yes, you don't make it past there. But I thought overall in the regular season, they couldn't have had a much better season. Their 2 losses came against Buffalo, and they had one other loss. So besides Buffalo, they went 15-1, which is a pretty stinking good season. I personally am going to try to steal. It's playoff teams. Not a lot of players are going to want to leave Toronto. Toronto's not going to want to see players go to Buffalo. So these next 2 teams and all last week as well, it was very difficult. Sheldon Burns, I kind of went to UFA, and that's kind of the route I've been going here because trying to make a trade with especially Toronto likely doesn't happen. I think they made a trade last year with it was not Andrew Q, right? Because he plays for Georgia. It was the other Q, his brother. I'll check it in a second while you're talking. But the Q went to Toronto and became a practice player there for, I think, a 6th round pick. But I'm thinking Sheldon Burns, 33 years old, defenseman, 15 games, 2 assists, but 29 loose balls, 10 caused turnovers, 5 block shots. He was so far behind the Mitch DeSnews, the Brad Kreese, the Mazzucas, the Martin, Hostrauser, Wire. He was so far behind all these players that I would like to see what his abilities are when you have, yes, a very talented defense, but maybe Bomberry doesn't come back. Maybe Dawson doesn't come back. You got a few other Spangers at the UFA. Maybe some of these players won't want to or don't return to Buffalo, and maybe they go somebody like a Sheldon Burns out here.
Yeah, I was going with the bigger name that you did just mention. Also, what?
It was Alex Q. I was close. I knew it was Andrew and Alex. Alex Q.
Also a UFA, also 33 years old, but Hostrauser, if he by any means would want to switch to the championship winning team and not the team that continues to lose, I think, yeah, that would be tough. I think that they'd have to squash some beef for sure. But yeah, I mean, he's a UFA, 17 games played, one of their best defenders on their entire team, 76 loose balls, 25 caused turnovers, 7 block shots. He was 3rd on their team in caused turnovers. He's one of the staples on that defense, but he is UFA. He is getting a little bit older, and if he starts to believe that maybe their team can't get past Buffalo and he would like to run it back for an actual championship at his age. Maybe he switches sides like a certain Mitch DeSnew may have done a few years ago, and we're still not happy about it, and you still don't have a title. So take that, Doctor. Dr. Loser, as PK just pointed out. So, yeah, I mean, I think Haustrauser would be a sweet fit for us, but at the same time, like you said, they'd have to squash some beasts between him and Weiss. But if they could figure that out and learn to play kindly together, I think he'd be a pretty big addition for the defense.
Yeah, I thought about him as well. He's one of those. Last year he was a UFA and he only signed a 1-year deal. So it seems like Toronto likes to hand out 2- and 3-year deals. So
Kinda like
I wonder
Buffalo.
if that's something's up. I know Nick Rose only signed a 1-year deal, but it seems like something maybe is in the water there, and maybe if they both agreed, hey, maybe just 1-year deal. I don't know. This is all speculation. It's off season. We're just making stuff up at this point. But yeah, maybe he could be available for Buffalo Bandits. He was definitely one that caught my eye as a UFA. I was just like, I don't know if Nick Weiss would really approve, especially with his wedding coming up. I'd be like, I don't know. But yeah, Phil went there. I didn't. So Nick Weiss, go after that guy below me. Go after him. Maybe he's not one of these two sides. He's below me right now, but on YouTube he's on one of these sides. Yeah, that's the guy.
I'm above you on
Let's
my
go over
screen.
the Albany Firewolves. They finished second, came in second. I had them pegged for 15th before the season started. But you don't have to talk about that. 11-7 on the year, 11.45 goals for, tied for 7th in the league, 10.61 goals against, 3rd in the league. They got no first-round picks because they traded theirs to the Las Vegas Desert Dogs for John Wagner, who was a monster addition for their team, helped them get to the finals. They just traded, well, not just, but in this offseason they've already made some moves. Nathan Grennan, he went to now Ottawa, used to be New York, for picks, and Justin Getty, their backup goaltender, went to Las Vegas for picks as well. Why do they move Grennan, you ask? Well, there's a guy named Dyson Williams who's going to be coming on to this team from the University of Duke.
Who's that?
Grennan was kind of just a placeholder. He came over from Panther City. Now he's making his name felt in Ottawa because he's doing everything out there, which is a great thing for them. But this was a team that exceeded expectations by a long shot. And by I mean a long shot, once again, I had them pegged for 15th when the season, or before the season even started. I didn't give them a chance. I thought they were a team that was slowly rebuilding, and they were going to be a growth year waiting for the Dyson Williams to come in. Alex Simmons, Ethan Walker, Ty Kurt, this offense is so terrifying. They're kind of the exact opposite of Toronto because they're locked in, they're young, and they're really, really good. They're going to keep growing together. This offense is absolutely terrifying for the next 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, speaking of that offense, we'll just go over some fun breakdowns. This team went from 167 goals for to 206, a ridiculous jump. In 2023, their top point getter was Connor Kelly with 68 points. Last year, it was rookie Alex Simmons with 96, and then Ethan Walker jumped from 56 to 85, and then Ty Kurtz at 79. So they went from their top player getting 68 points to having 3 players with over 68 points and almost over 80 points. And then Longboat was added to the team with another 57 points. Sam Firth with 47 points. Their offense just exploded. And it was through 2 rookies, like you mentioned, but Ethan Walker also made a massive jump himself. And then they added some really solid depth pieces to that. Their offense is really scary, and it's only going to get more terrifying. I think the only thing that is going to work a little bit against them, but they're all incredible. So, I mean, they will make it work. And, I mean, you can say the same thing about the Bandits for years and years now, and no one's really been able to figure it out. But they have a very unique offense. They have a very unique defense, and I think teams are going to eventually slowly figure out how to play them a little bit tougher, whereas right now everyone that plays them kind of keeps saying the same thing. They have a unique style of defense. Like, they don't play defense like anybody else. They don't play offense like anybody else. So I think teams over time will start to learn more and more and more about the ways they play offense, the way they play defense. And I mean, yes, they will adapt and the league will adapt. I mean, it's just kind of how everything works. But again, teams have been trying to adapt to the Bandits for how many years now and have yet to really do it. So this team's just going to be really scary. Their defense could definitely use a guy for sure. I mean, it's weird when your face-off guy is number 2 on your team and caused turnovers. They had a good like group defense, but no real all-stars on their defense. They don't have anybody that really pops off. They don't have a Disnu. They don't have a oh my gosh, a Dilks or anybody like that. They just don't have that go-to absolutely, star-studded defensive player. They have a solid group of players that are kind of all right around the same level, but they don't really have that go-to guy, and I think that's going to be the big thing that they're missing moving forward. I mean, this offense is going to be set for years and years and years to come, so I think they're going to slowly be able to work on their defense and adding a player like that, and if this team can add a few players like a Hostrauser, for example, or anybody of that nature that's just a little bit more star-studded for the defense, they're going to be even scarier than they already are. And then Jameson went from a 77 save percentage to an 80, so he also got even better and kind of went back to his really solid days of playing when he was, MVP or goalie of the year, one of the two?
Yeah, goalie of the shortened season.
Yes. So, I mean, he's got it in him, and now with a better team in front of him, a little bit better defense in front of him, he showed that he absolutely still has that ability and played really, really well. This team's scary. They're a scary team.
Yeah, this is a team, and we'll go over it as we get closer to August, which I think is like 3 shows away. Like a Chad Tutton, a John Rannigan, a Liam Burns, a type of player like that would be massive addition to this type of team. But let me throw out one number for you, Phil. 27. That is the oldest player on this forward group. It's Ethan Walker, who's 27. Well, it's just stupid, ridiculous how young this team absolutely is. And I'm pulling up the numbers right here. Let's see. Our youngest forward right now is Tehoka Nanakok, who's 26. Okay? 26 is the youngest that we have. 27 is the oldest they have. This team is locked and loaded. And can there be a little bit of regression next year? Yes, it's possible. There's how many... There's 23 games of film on this team now. They're going to have a full year of Alex Simmons. They're going to have a full year of Ty Kurtz. They're going to be able to figure out what these players are doing and how this offense works. But then they have a counter. They're adding Dyson Williams to this offense so they can switch it up a little bit because they're adding the first overall pick from last year, who is a stud in box lacrosse. And I'm very interested to see how that blends in. And I think because of how their offense works, where they really do not care who's scoring, and you can see that by their top 3 players separated by 18 points. Their top 3 is separated by 18 points. This team, I'm absolutely Albany has went from a team that I predicted to finish in 15th, and a team that is kind of like the little brother, to that team that is going to be up there with the Torontos and the San Diegos for years to come. And I think Albany is going to be the biggest competition for Buffalo for the next few years. And they could be the reason that Buffalo does not advance and go for a three-peat, because this young offense is just studly. But yeah, the defense, if they can add one more piece. But I absolutely love this defense as well. I think their defense was underrated all year long. And that's a huge reason why Jameson's numbers came back down, because 2 years ago, they stunk. They were 3-15, and that's the reason they were able to draft Dyson Williams. Their defense got better. They filled out their offense. Some of these young players came along. Patrick Cossack, I love him. I that was a name that I wanted for Buffalo, but he's not leaving. There's no reason they would get rid of him. I do agree they need to add a piece on the back end, maybe a transition player as well, and they're just going to be scary because Jameson's only 28. Will Johansson's coming in, who's a transition player, 7th overall in 2022. He missed all last year, but he's 25. You got Volkov, who's 22. You got Wagner, who they traded for, is 21. Young's 21. Their oldest player, they got 2 players that are their oldest, Watkinson and Nardella, and they're 31 years old. This team is not going away anytime soon. So if you're thinking, hey, Buffalo got by Albany, it's no problem, this team is just going to continue to get better and better with experience. And, we gave them an A. And I was very close to giving them an A+, but I'm saving that for one team that we haven't talked to yet because they finished the job. But, it's as high as they can get without winning the championship. I thought their season was almost perfect, and you couldn't have asked much more. And hopefully the fans start filling that arena, because Albany has a team that is studly and one that you're going to want to watch because of how entertaining they are. Like you said, there's no team like them in the NLL that plays like them.
So my big question at the end of these two breakdowns. So it seems like you have your future question, but next year, I know we're a ways away and there's plenty of off-season still, free agency to go, but right now with how these two teams are built, Toronto and Albany, which team next season, not down the line, future years, I do think Albany might be the team that is the scary one. I think they might overtake Toronto in time, but do you think next year they are the team that worries you the most, or is Toronto still up there, right there with them, or a little bit ahead of them just because of what they can do as well?
Well, real quick, I have them trading for Mike Byrne. That would be my addition from them, subtraction. Not really much to go into. It's just another player that Buffalo could add to the back end. And, oh, surprise, surprise, that's all I'm really been talking about is depth on the back end. But I the more I've watched Albany, and I watched every game last year. I've been meaning to, and probably will in the next couple months now that everything's slowly dying down around here. I'm gonna probably rewatch some of these games. Albany is just terrifying to me, just because of how they're built, how young they are, and if they're able to stick together, they're going to be absolutely terrifying. Like I've talked up Toronto since we started this show. I think Toronto is still going to be terrifying with that defense, but Buffalo seems to have their number. I don't remember the last time Toronto beat Buffalo handily in the regular season 2 seasons ago, and I get that. But Albany seems to have something when it comes to the regular season with Buffalo, and even in Game 1, Buffalo had to go on that absolute tear in to go on that run and to take Game 1. But I think Albany is the team Buffalo is definitely going to be. I think Albany is going to be the team that's nipping on Buffalo's heels all next season, and it wouldn't be shocking if they're the teams battling it out in the finals once again. I could see it being another Albany Buffalo finals, kind of like Colorado and Buffalo were back to back, but hopefully it's a different result the second time through as well.
Yeah, I think Albany's got to be. I mean, with the way Toronto's thrown everything they possibly can at Buffalo and at their team, and they just still, while having an absolutely incredible year, weren't able to get past Buffalo, and Buffalo still made it look pretty easy. I mean, Nick Rose made it as difficult as he possibly could, but I mean, for the most part, it just was not as difficult against a team that was number one in the season as it should be, whereas the Albany games were scary. The second one, Buffalo kind of blew the doors off really early and then just kind of ran away and run. So, I mean, that one wasn't as bad. But that first game, like you mentioned, really back and forth, really scary, and they have their number during the season. So, I mean, honestly, to me, still kind of mind-blowing that the Bandits were able to sweep playoffs against two incredible teams. And I think you and I would both have Toronto and Albany as the 1-2, even if it's not how playoffs worked out and we just had to kind of rank the teams postseason, how we felt that everybody really should have done, or if everything went perfectly in our minds, who should have ended up in the finals, that kind of thing, just based on how good the teams were. I think we would add Buffalo, probably Albany, then Toronto, just as the top 3 teams in the entire league throughout playoffs and everything. So to see Buffalo sweep everybody, just absolutely incredible. But Albany, they're scary. They're a very scary team.
Yeah, and their only UFA right now is Leo Storos, who's 30, defenseman.
Real chirpy.
Else is either
real chirpy,
RFA
that guy.
Or, yeah, they're terrifying. That's why they got an A. But that wraps up the report cards for the off season here. Next week we're gonna be talking all Buffalo Bandits. So if you've been waiting these 5 shows, well, buckle up. It's Bandits Central next episode. Maybe we'll get news on Matt Vinc, but we'll talk about contract statuses. We'll talk about who we want back. We kind of want everybody back, but there's only so much room, what their plans are, and so on and so forth. Kind of revisit what the team currently stands at and what it could be looking like as August quickly approaches, because after that episode, we got 2 episodes to go until free agency opens they haven't announced it, but I'm pretty sure it opens August 1st. That's why it's been rolling. Maybe the league will actually get off their tush, or what do we call it?
Keister?
Keister, and actually start announcing some things. That would be absolutely lovely, but not expecting anything 3 years in. But again, next week, all Bandits, all the time. Buckle up, get ready. We got a star-studded event. But Phil, before we dive into the Buffalo Sabres, because we got a lot to talk about there, let's dive into our second sponsor of this episode, Mr. Sizzles.
Our second ever sponsor is Mr. Sizzles at 346 Connecticut Street in Buffalo, New York, but they are opening 2 new locations, one hopefully pretty soon in Hamburg and one a little bit farther down the road still, hopefully this year in Clarence. They are currently open 7 days a week, 11 to 11, with a brunch menu on Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3.
Now, this will be our final time having Mr. Sizzles on this show. For now, don't worry, it's not a bad breakup. We're still in full support of one another, but with 2 new spots opening up, they're going to focus all their time on all their future success. We personally can't thank them enough for taking the chance on our little show, partnering up with us. We have said it from the jump. The only sponsors we want on this show are ones we truly love and think are truly amazing. And that is Mr. Sizzles to a T. We couldn't sing their praises more enough. They were one of the first ones we thought of when trying to come up with possible sponsors and people to contact. Again, we can't sing their praises enough. Make sure you go support them at their Buffalo location and at their 2 new locations opening up very soon, like Phil mentioned, in Clarence and Hamburg. We truly wish nothing but the absolute best for Mr. Sizzles. We're still going to be partaking on their delicious food. Can't wait for their 2 new locations to open up, so hopefully Buffalo clears out a little bit and the wait time isn't as long. But I mean, for that kind of food, it really doesn't matter waiting a little bit longer because it's absolutely delicious. Phil, I don't know if you have any parting words for Mr. Sizzles, but again, this is not a bad breakup. We're still supporting each other whatsoever. We're just going our different ways, or separate ways for now, as we enter different realms of our next adventure.
Yeah, I mean, you were the one pushing for them real hard. I've heard you guys talk about them all the time before Bandits games and how often you guys always kind of wanted to meet up there and eat, and having the opportunity to eat there a few times now since having them as a sponsor. It is really delicious. It is really amazing. We're not just kind of saying that to, because they're a sponsor on the show. We truly believe it. We truly think they are a really delicious and incredible family-run, super nice people, just overall incredible business to support. And we will continue to support them and eat their delicious food as long as they keep making it.
Yeah, so whether they're on this show or not, make sure you check their menu out on their socials or at MrSizzles.com. We will not stop supporting them, and we hope you do not as well. So let's dive into our final segment here. The Buffalo Sabres. Consta Helenius, Phil, has signed his 3-year entry-level deal, and I think that ties into the trade they made. And we've been hoping for a trade. I'm going to try to tie these 2 together on why I am a fan of the 2-for-1 trade. I was kind of hoping 2 would go out the door instead of the 2 coming in the door. But regardless, Friday they traded Matt Savoy to Edmonton for Ryan McLeod and Tyler Tulio? Tulio? That sounds right. McLeod, 2-way center. He's probably going to be your third-line center. He's not very physical, but great analytical numbers. Might be the fastest skater in the NHL. Only 24 years old. Still got a year left before he's an RFA. Last year set records for himself. Personal best at 30 points in 81 games. 32, 43, and 75 in 219 games. Was one of the best power play or penalty killers in the NHL. And then the rookie, a 5th-round pick in 2020. He's 21 points in 54 games last year. He's going to go straight to Rochester. He's more of a depth prospect at this point. But I think the reason for, I guess I'll say it really quickly. I think the biggest reason they were able to part with Matt Savoy is because they got Consta Helenius in the draft. I think if they did not get him, I'm not sure if this trade pans out.
Yeah, and I think you also just have the pipeline's huge. Like they
Yes.
gotta, it's literally overflowing with prospects. Like it's not a figure of speech. They have nowhere for these prospects to go. You cannot keep them on this team. Like it's not possible. Like yes, Savoy might have been great for this team, but we don't know, and he's not ready yet. He's still a year or two away, and he might not have fit this team and what they need. And like you just mentioned, you just got his replacement in the draft. So it was like your pipeline didn't change at all, and it's still overflowing, and it still needs some serious adjustment, and players still need to be sent out. But they still have, like, Kulik is, possibly pushing for a spot on this team. Rozik's possibly pushing for a spot. Oslin, like, they have so many players trying to get on this team, and there's no room for any of them. And Savoy was one of them. Like, yes, he's a, ninth overall pick, but Hellenis is going to just completely take his spot in the pipeline. And honestly, it sounds like he might be even closer to NHL ready because he's already playing against men in Finland. And from everything we saw from the development camp, like, I don't know, it was kind of weird. I read an article that they held out a lot of their top prospects from development camp.
Yeah,
and
they wanted to focus on a select few, so they were telling some of them not to come, which I
is
guess kind of makes sense.
I don't love it, but
they're only bringing in guys that I didn't really fully look at that because it's the off season. I don't really care about prospect camp, but there's other people that'll talk about it. But I think mostly they're focusing on the players that are going to be going back to school or over outside the country to mostly focus on them, because the rest of the guys are going to be in the pipeline playing in the AHL. You don't really have to bring them to prospect camp because you're already going to have your hands on them in a couple months.
Right. Well, I mean, they said that because some of the more elite prospects weren't there, but still good players. Like Consta just kind of blew everybody away and was just leagues better than kind of everybody there. And I think a big part of that is because he's playing over in Finland against men. And he even mentioned it in his interview. It was like, it was weird coming back and playing against like kids, essentially. Like, yes, he is one, but he's being forced to grow up very quickly playing in Finland against other grown adults. Like, it's very different going against prospects who are, 18, 19, 20 compared to grown men who are, 27, 28, 29, 30, up to probably like 35, whatever's in that league. So I do think he's a prospect that's more mature and could already affect this team sooner than possibly Savoy ever could have. So I think the trade's fantastic. As far as like losing Savoy means nothing to me, I guess is what I'm essentially getting at. Like, yes, he's great, but they have to start shipping these prospects out, and to get a player who's immediately going to impact your team is something we've been looking for, I don't know, for like 10 years now, to actually make an impactful trade that's going to help this team. And something they were missing was a third line center. Now you have a extremely fast, pretty decent, very young third line center, and that's perfect. Like, the trade to me is fantastic, and everything they've done this offseason, like we said last episode, and now especially with this trade, has been really good and promising, and it's taken way too long, in my opinion. I mean, the fourth line should have been overhauled like 6 years ago, but the fact that they were able to do it and the way they were able to do it, getting a very fast fourth line who's also very physical, I think their hits are fantastic, but I think a lot of what's going talked about less, is the fact that they are also very, very fast players along with McLeod, and they're all going to be very fast and aggressive. I think it's going to be a fourth line that is actually one that other teams don't want to play against finally, which will be fantastic to see. As far as, I don't know, like if you look at it just in black and white, from last year to this year, this team got better this offseason, right? Like, their draft was fantastic. The moves they've made, even though they probably took way too long to make them, are fantastic. I mean, you mentioned it a few times now. I don't think we mentioned it on the show yet, but that their addition by subtraction is arguably some of the best they've done in a long time. Getting rid of a lot of these players who've been just hanging around here, having a great time, losing, but I mean, just sitting on the team doing nothing for years and years. Finally, they had some roster turnover that they desperately needed, and it all looks better. Do I think it's a playoff team right now? I think they could push for it, but not really. I think they're once again banking on the top six to have rebound seasons. They're expecting Benson to take that next step and be even better than he was this year. You're expecting a full season of Quinn. And I think they're just The top six, it sounds like once again you're banking too much on rebounds and progression and health, and then the bottom six looks like it was actually overhauled and looks much, much better. So they definitely made progress. I don't know right now if it's a playoff team and it's finally headed what seems like in the right direction, but at the same time, I don't know. The top six has to either have a massive season and rebound, or I don't know if they're going to make it again. But at least we're finally seeing some moves and some life in Adams and some willingness to let go of a top prospect. I mean, more than anything, like I do like the trade, but I think just his willingness to give up one of the best prospects in the system is probably the most exciting thing about that trade, that he's finally willing to get rid of a prospect that he's been, holding on to all these guys where there's just simply no room anymore for any of them pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking around the league, I think this trade either does one of two things. It either kind of gives a wake-up call to Buffalo and saying, hey, maybe Matt Savoy's value around the league wasn't as high as it was here in Buffalo and how high we thought it was. Or how I personally take it, this is a team who's missed playoffs for 13 straight seasons. This is a GM that knows his butt's on the line. If he doesn't make playoffs this year, he's probably getting fired. Teams take advantage of that. I mean, even if you're looking at fantasy, there's a team that wants to go for it, and they need, if they're down a wide receiver, one of their top wide receivers got hurt, what are you going to do? You're going to bully that team and take advantage of them because you know you have exactly what they need. That's what I personally think teams around the league are doing to Buffalo. They're playing hardball because they know they have a GM that's waiting on death's door, that if he does not get to the playoffs, he needs to do this. And I said on the last show that they still needed to make trades, and that, yes, it's still a long time until October when the season actually starts, but I think there needs to be a time where Kevin Adams finally pulls the trigger. I think he finally pulled the trigger. Is this a win for Buffalo? Personally, I think it is. I absolutely love the move because, again, you just drafted Helenius, who's going to take Savoy's spot. It's canceled out. Like, you can just separate the two, and maybe Helenius is actually better than Savoy. Savoy was playing in juniors the whole time because he couldn't play in the AHL because of the stupid rule, but we don't know how he would have played in the AHL. Could he go to Edmonton, start on their opening day roster, and absolutely put up 30 goals? Yes, I could see that happening because guess what? It's still Buffalo. Regardless, it's still Buffalo. He could go win a Stanley Cup now that he's with Skinner. There's two Buffalo Sabres there, so make your bets on Edmonton to win the Stanley Cup.
They're going to win.
But in this offseason, you needed a third-line center upgrade over Peyton Krebs, and you need a top-six winger. You also needed to fix your bottom six. Guess what? He's done a lot of things so far. Is the job done? No. They still need a top-six winger. It needs to happen. There's still so much talent in the pipeline. Use next year's first-round pick. I don't care. Maybe teams will be banking on you missing, and it'll be a lottery pick. Don't care. Guess what? Time's now. You got Rosine. You got Cooley. You got Oslin. How many more players do we have to keep naming? But I'm going to take this as a positive note. I love the move. If you're looking across the league, maybe other teams and everybody else is going, Sabres just pulled another Buffalo Sabres move. It doesn't matter. Like, it's addition by subtraction because you're bringing in Helenius to take Savoy's spot. This is going to be a player that is a big upgrade in the bottom six, playing the third-line center role over Krebs. This also frees them up to possibly move Peyton Krebs to a team that still thinks he has value, that still thinks that he could take that next step in the league because, Casey Middlestead took that next step right around Peyton Krebs' time. Tage Thompson did the same thing. I do agree, though, they still need another move in the top six. They have to because you're banking too much on players rebounding and going back to what they were 2 years ago. You're banking on the power play to get better, which I assume it will be because Matt Ellis is not be on the bench. That still took too long. But like you said, the addition by subtraction as well for players that they did not bring back. Oposo didn't come back. Skinner didn't come back. Olofsson didn't come back. Gergensons, Robinson, Jost. All these players that we were worried about, hey, are they going to re-sign Jost to just be that 13th forward? Is Gergensen going to be coming back? And there was an offer out to him. They wanted to try to do it. But I absolutely love all the moves that they weren't able to make by bringing some of these players back because it would have just been doing the same thing over and over again. So I love Kevin Kevin Adams' offseason so far. I said it on the last show, and I said it now. If you just take the 13 years out of it, this has been an unbelievable offseason for him. But there's still one giant missing puzzle piece that he needs to take advantage of. And I get it. Not very many top 6 players have been on the move. Like, around the league, it's just not a thing right now. But you might be, the Buffalo Sabres might be in the best position to go get it because of how much value they have. I'm not saying clean out the cupboards and go trade all these prospects for it. You're not going to pull a Tim Murray. But you have pieces, and that's why you built up your prospect pool so much that you can make a trade like this where you send out possibly more value than you got in return for a need that you make. This is how playoff teams continue to do good. This is how Pittsburgh's always making playoffs. This is how Tampa Bay is always making playoffs, because they're just trading their future for the now to keep winning. Yes, you'll have to pay the piper down the road, but I absolutely love this offseason so far. Just one more move, Kevin. One more move, and I will crown you the champion of the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I feel like it's a long shot to make that move, but at the same time, I think I would have guessed there was 0% chance that he moves Savoy this offseason.
Right.
So, I mean, I think part of that trade is simply the fact that he was willing to do it. And I think that's a big part of it, is that, okay, he finally understands you have to move some of these high caliber prospects to get something that's going to help your team now. And the fact that he was finally willing to show that he's able to do it, I think is a big step forward to putting a little bit of hope that he can get a top 6 forward before October and possibly make some magic happen. I know there's still a few free agents out there that could be interesting to help slot some things in. And then, I mean, the last I looked, there were a few players around the league that are top 6 that are trying to get out of their teams, or their teams are done with them. So, I mean, maybe you can use some of that to your advantage as well if you're Adams, that, like, we know the entire league knows you're trying to get rid of this guy. We need a guy, and we have prospects. You know, just find some kind of middle ground, make it work. Overpay in prospects if you have to, but like you said, at the same time, don't clean out the cupboard. I mean, you know, you still need some kind of pipeline. But overall, just really excited about the trade, that he was even willing to make it, but also I think he's a player that is very, very helpful to this team, and the speed he brings. He's still only 24, so again, it's not like you're bringing in a 36-year-old or 32-year-old with 1 year on his deal who's not going to be here next year, and you got rid of one of your best prospects for it. Like, you're bringing in a guy who you're hoping to have around for a long time, and maybe he makes that next jump on this team to be closer to a 40-point third-line center who's very fast and still young. So I do like the move overall, and I mean, like you said, I think so far it's been a win for the offseason, but if he doesn't get a top 6 forward, I wouldn't say it's a complete loss by any means, but you need that in order to make it a truly successful offseason.
So we're dying down here. There was one more move Buffalo made. 30 seconds, Phil. What did you think of the Henry Jokiharju coming back off an RFA deal? 1 year, $3.1 million.
I think he had a massive rebound last year. I mean, I think it's another prove it, because I don't know where you actually are in him, and I guess you'll say your feelings next. But 2 years ago, he was very shaky, and he had very streaky, just hot, moments where he had a few games where he looked really good, and then a few games where he looked really bad. Last year, I think he had a really solid season throughout the whole year. So I think the 1 year is simply a prove it kind of situation. But at the same time, the problem with that is, I mean, he's already making $3 million on a 1 year prove it. If he has another really strong year and you want him to come back again, you are betting that, he's going to make a lot more money all of a sudden on a longer term contract if he does repeat what he was able to do and just has another really good season. So I think it's risky if you really feel like he's a big part of this team's future. At the same time, they have a lot of defensive young players that are in the pipeline as well, and maybe someone who you kind of move on from next year if other players step up. But I think it's I don't know. I'm happy to have him back, but I feel like it's a risk as far as trying to sign him again for the future.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that next year he will be a UFA, so your rights are not you don't have
Right.
his rights anymore after this. But I think that's perfectly. It's a make or break year for him. And if the Sabres are struggling, it's easy to move a 1 year, $3.1 million deal than it is a multi-year deal for a defenseman. So I think he could be a
And they
rental
might do
for
it either way.
another piece if Buffalo's struggling at the deadline. But I think bringing him back for a team that's hungry for right-handed defensemen is an important signing, even if it is $3.1 million. But they still have $13.7 million left. Still got Krebs.
They're doing all right.
Krebs, Malstein, and UPL remaining as RFAs, and Malstein and UPL elected for arbitration. Hopefully it doesn't go that far. But Phil, is there anything else you would like to add to this episode before we shut it down for another week until next Wednesday?
I did look at the arbitration list because there was only like 13 players or something. I was like, the Sabres have 2. That's not very good. But I think Columbus had 3. So it's not just Buffalo. So I'll take that.
That's fair. On our next episode, once again, Buffalo Bandits Central here. We'll be going over all the contract statuses, things we think they're going to be doing, players that we think they could be retaining, players that they possibly could be losing. So if you've been waiting along with us this whole offseason for Buffalo Bandits, you finally made it. It is time. But, that will pretty much close out this episode. We'll be talking Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres as well next episode because training camp is right around the corner, and Sabres, maybe they'll make another move. It's been good so far this offseason, Phil. Lots of good episodes back to back. But thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Thank you to Tap That Tap Room and Mr. Sizzles for sponsoring this show and this episode. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Make sure you check out our store on our link tree on our socials or that shop tab on our website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. And everybody out there, make sure you leave us that review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.